This is Patrick Heffernan at Technology Business Research, and welcome to the 6th roundtable that we've done since the beginning of this COVID-19 pandemic. And we're looking at the impacts of the pandemic on the technology industry and the business of doing technology. And so I've been joined today by a few senior analysts and a principal analyst to talk about two things in particular. One, IBM's big Think conference this week. And then secondly, what else we're thinking based on developments with COVID and developments with the vendors, the IT services vendors, the cloud vendors, the software vendors, and everyone else that we follow in this business. So today we've got Ezra Gottal with us again, as well as Nikki Kachpol, Boz Christoph, and Alita Bekhalova. And we're going to start with Nikki, who's going to tell us a little bit about what she thought of IBM's Think this week. Nikki?
Thank you, Patrick. My first takeaway from IBM's Think 2020 is that it's one of those events that reinforces the degree to which, as we all know, everything is changing and continues to do so. IBM as a company is clearly in the midst of its own multitude of changes, and it's really largely symbolic of what we're actually all going through. Back to IBM to start, it's an understatement to say that IBM is going through pretty much the most significant and spotlight-stealing evolution that any enterprise has ever encountered before. We have the historical $34 billion acquisition of Red Hat, a newly reformed leadership team that's still adjusting to the unconventional molding of two different schools of thought between IBM and Red Hat, and my colleagues will definitely speak more on that later. And now all of this being done in the midst of a global health crisis, which is unlike anything anyone has ever seen before. And it's really quite extraordinary to watch and experience, and also a little scary, I'm not going to lie. With regards to the conference itself, so much of what was covered throughout IBM Think 2020 was centered around themes that we keep hearing time and time again. Terms such as evolution, change. I really don't want to hear the word pivot ever again. The new normal. And when it comes to new normal, it's really, I want to rebrand it as the new abnormal, because we really don't know what's to come, what's down the pike. Anyway, to that end, IBM could almost be rebranded as, to the end of new abnormal, IBM Rethink. The array of topics and announcements over the course of the virtual event were focused on actions and technologies that enterprises will need to employ in order to rethink and evolve their own IT transformations. And this is all now being done against the backdrop of this burning imperative to do it now. And I don't want to say, companies are taking a match to their well-crafted original technology roadmaps and saying, oh, this is all done. But the timelines across the board are being significantly compressed, and the kind of quote unquote planning phase for many people has been eradicated to the doing phase, and to do so much sooner than we ever had anticipated at the beginning of this year. Now, when it comes to the integration of IBM with Red Hat, Think 2020 is a case that TBR thinks is a case for better together. And I speak to this in terms of how Red Hat has infused IBM with a jolt of openness and flexibility that has really breathed what seems like new life into IBM, which has long been known for its unshakable reputation in being a reliable thought leader, advisory partner that has guided enterprises for decades to transform. And on the other side of the equation, IBM gives Red Hat kind of experience, structure, and access to its many frameworks and history of leadership. So while we talk about rebranding and think versus rethink or vice versa, maybe even something like together apart would be a more apt way to describe the relationship. As we all know, the organizations seemingly largely operate separately. They have their own conferences, their own teams, but in a way are very integrated in their cohesive vision and the way that they're presenting their solutions to the marketplace. So that's something that my takeaway from attending both events has been really unique and interesting to watch. Now, when it comes to the cloud, two announcements that I would like to briefly touch on are around edge compute as well as AI, but there were so many others that I'm sure we will, that TBR and myself will talk about more at length later on, but these were the two that really stuck out at me. Regarding Edge, IBM's Edge Application Manager already was an industry standout in the sense that automation was a core competency offered that offloads the burden of not only transforming to the edge, but managing it, as the edge has so many endpoints and multiple layers of complexity that it can bring. And this was really a market differentiator that I saw when we were writing our edge compute market landscape that IBM brought versus some of the other vendors. Automation and ease of development as well as operating has been core to Red Hat since the start. So this also echoes nicely with that whole theme. IBM also spoke to the partner ecosystem as being key to the adoption of the edge, which highlights the earlier theme of better together as the fundamental dispersion of edge environments that are simultaneously complex as well as nuanced. The other area I wanted to briefly touch on before handing off to Alicia is AI. During the conference, IBM introduced a new set of AI-powered capabilities, all centered around AI ops, which are focused on helping CIOs automate IT infrastructures to be more resilient to future disruptions, pandemic or otherwise. I have a lot more to say about both of these topics, and we'll certainly follow up with more coverage, but we'll hand the mic over to my colleague Alicia so that we can hear her take on the event from the TBR Services team perspective. Over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Nikki. I see Jeff is here. Maybe we can have him talk a little bit about IBM.
Yeah, Alicia, why don't you go, and then Jeff can hear your thoughts, and then he'll weigh in as well on what's happening in the broader picture from IBM.
Sure. So covering IBM Services, the key takeaway from IBM Think Digital 2020 for me is that really technology has enabled companies to react and get through the COVID-19 outbreak. And IBM Services has been the key lever to supporting clients through that period, through their pre-COVID-19 digital transformations and during COVID-19 crisis spread, providing the whole slew of services that cover advise, build, run, and support lifecycle. So typically, when we hear IBM speak about the services business, it's really tied to the direction where IBM is going in the technology area. So Nikki talked about cloud, and since hybrid cloud and AI are now a core element of investment for IBM, services are really going into that direction as well, enabling clients' hybrid cloud adoption or AI-enabled supply chains and operations. So anything that's tied to IBM's investment around hybrid cloud and AI, that applies to services as well. So we saw multiple examples about adoption around cloud, around use of AI that has enabled clients to survive through the challenging times. And my key understanding is that, and the message that IBM Services brought at Think was that companies that already started their digital transformations before the outbreak and started working and adopting next generation solutions such as cloud and analytics, AI, IoT, blockchain into their operations, and all already had some level of cybersecurity solutions into the mix in their infrastructures, they were able to react well to the challenges and to the uncertainty brought by COVID-19. They did experience transition time and some challenges along the way, but they were able to minimize and offset the negative effect. And those companies continue to use those solutions, and IBM is seeing opportunities to expand wallet share with such clients, to add more to the mix and to provide more transformation as they move through the COVID-19 era and then post-COVID-19 when we get out of the lockdowns and expand into shift back to the normal business models, if we can call them normal, or new normal business models. So using the IBM Services industry expertise, which is very, very important for IBM Services, is to provide that industry spin and capabilities, as well as specialized solutions to each industry, integrating with the advise, build, run, and support services lifecycle, and then closely tying it with every technology that IBM provides and also partner technologies as well into the mix. That's really helping IBM Services generate work and activities with clients. And we heard multiple examples of IBM's current clients at Think about their transition to cognitive enterprises and smarter businesses, and how IBM enabled the changes through technologies and help clients be resilient as much as possible during the pandemic. For example, they talked about a client that established a supply chain resiliency to the crisis by using an AI-enabled supply chain model to address unexpected shifts in demand and supply side. So, working more in that area is something that IBM will be doing on the services side because that's an opportunity. Another takeaway is that, when the moving of people to remote service delivery, and on the IBM side and for clients as well, enabling remote workforces already happened in the past month. It was a quick reaction and everyone had to adjust to it. And IBM supported clients during that time. Activities around cybersecurity, around establishing business continuity, reducing operational costs, improving operations, making them more resilient, strengthening supply chains, and improving employee experience, as well as customer experience, but now more so employee experience, are becoming more of priorities for IBM Services in the coming months, as clients work through the uncertainty and prepare for the next new normal. So to me, the largest challenge for clients, I think there's going to be two challenges. One would be that the ones that have not embarked on digital transformation activities before COVID-19, I have the feeling that those clients would have the hardest time overcoming any pressures and may not be able to succeed at all. So they would really need some help from IBM and from other IT service providers to come out of that situation. And the next is, what is really the new normal that we expect after COVID-19? What type of operations would clients need to adopt to be able to operate? What type of workforce will they have? Is it half virtual, half on-site? Those are all unknowns that we still don't have the answer to, and certainly IBM and other IT service providers need to understand and to quickly adjust their offerings to capture those opportunities with services around educating and advising clients on technology-led solutions that will enable the new business models of the future.
Thanks, Elitza. And I mean, it's just striking how it was such a massive event. And I know our write-up is coming out on next week, I think, and that's why it takes multiple analysts to cover everything. Jeff, I know you participated a lot. Some thoughts from you on what you took away from IBM Think?
Sure, thanks. I'm going to talk about it really in just three things. I'm more interested in how they're coming together after the acquisition and what they can bring to market. So really what you have here are three different things. You have brand, culture, and innovation. And the selling features now being brought together are openness, innovation, and trust. With openness really where Red Hat can excite and energize the developer community to write the code on the IBM platforms supported by Red Hat OpenShift and on down the line. Innovation, they both have a very, very good reputation on innovation. You can take a look at quantum and what IBM's doing there, or blockchain, or AI early on with Watson having come out, God, almost a decade ago now. And the other piece that's got to be taken a look at is the culture. Now, as far as the culture goes, this is where I think IBM can learn a little bit from Red Hat in terms of Red Hat essentially was the pioneer in the subscription business model that is the underpinning of all native clouds. And it's the underpinning of taking projects, as Stephanie Shirasa would always say, open source projects, and turning them into enterprise software products. We'll now pivot that over to GTS run, build, and maintain IP knowledge they've gained over the years in all the enterprise data centers and written code for, and turn those into products in the form of cloud packs, and understand the Red Hat subscription model and be able to monetize it in a profitable way. So those things, seeing how the culture shifts is going to be interesting. And I think, Arvind Krishna as CEO and Jim Whitehurst as president is an excellent way to go, where Mr. Krishna can be out assuring the legacy customers of the ongoing roadmap so that they can see that it will be open and flexible and move things anywhere, anytime at the push of a button, written once, etc. So that is good from that perspective. And it's also very good for Mr. Whitehurst to be in charge essentially of the operations as it's learning the new ways of going to market and monetization that are the sort of native cloud open world. Whereas, IBM has been behind, traditionally behind the glass and all those wonderful things, the Mad Men era blue suit salesman. So those are the pieces that need to be put together. And quite frankly, this management team has the potential to do for IBM, or has the need to do for IBM, what Satya Nadella did for Microsoft after Ballmer stepped down. So they've got a big opportunity, and it looks like a good cast of professionals in order to get it done. Now, lastly is the innovation piece. It seems odd to say that, but tech doesn't matter as much anymore. It's how you stitch it together. It's data management. It's instead of DevOps, it's one of the analysts said yesterday, it's data ops, because you can't wrangle this stuff. You can't be wasting human labor to get it all put together. And this is where blockchain, to assure, you can permission it, you can put it anywhere you want, you can determine who gets to see what piece, identity access management, et cetera, et cetera. But the data just moves and can be joined automatically rather than the labor-intensive way that these things have been building up today. That's where they have a huge opportunity laying on top of OpenShift with Watson Analytics, or just analytics, laying on top of that to fire it around wherever it needs to go. So now, as these data sets get bigger, as the algorithms get more complex, quantum is going to be needed for that. They have a very deep advantage in terms of the ecosystem they built, as well as the competencies and capabilities that they have. And that's the engine for the fourth industrial revolution. And these guys are out in front with that, with the open layers that come around it. Lastly, on innovation, and this is going to sound a little bit odd, is the Z. The venerable Z, the decades-old thing. If you're under 40 and you're listening to this, you're rolling your eyes right now. But Z14 gave it pervasive encryption. Z15 gave it the data passport. Data passports means identity access management on the fly from a central control point. So that's for your data management. The other thing they've done, this blew my mind, they have an air-cooled Z version now. So they can move this into the small and medium enterprise. They talk about its price performance against x86. It takes, it was a factor, it's like 23 times fewer cores to do the same work as an Intel x86 chipset. And this is where I didn't see the numbers. They say it's got a 20% better ROI over 5 years. So you're seeing now the potential. Just run Moore's Law out another 3-4 years. We've got a departmental Z. Pretty soon we'll have Z at the edge. And when you have Z at the edge, you've got command and control for network, virtualized networks as well. So there's innovation around the Z. And that's important because this is an inside-out transformation in terms of inside out from the enterprise, exposing the data that's been behind fortress data centers in a secure and professional manner. And that's where IBM has that trust. They don't have trust necessarily on business logic. That's for the advisory firms. But coming inside out from the IT shop, they certainly have that trust. And now they have the openness and the, I'll call it a subsidiary that is very strong with the developer community. So on paper, it looks like they're primed to be able to take advantage of this, and it'll come down to execution.
Did we lose you, Jeff?
No,
Okay.
I just kind of looked at the clock and put the brakes on.
Yeah, that's good. It comes down to execution. God, you could say that. And that's actually where we were at the beginning of this pandemic. It was all about execution. It wasn't about long-term strategy. It wasn't about thinking about the big picture. It was, what do companies need to do right now to execute to ensure their clients or their employees' safety, ensure that they can serve their clients and all that. So, Ezra, with all that thought, those thinkings about IBM Think, what's your sense right now in the bigger picture and the full IT, the full technology sector with respect to where we are with COVID at the moment? And I hope we haven't lost Ezra.
I'm back. You haven't lost me. Thank you, Patrick, and I'm sorry. I cover devices and IoT. I did not attend Think. However, I think the findings from Think uncover the big major trends that we need to map out going forward in this crisis. The first one, I think, is the recession, and in devices, that's a particularly sensitive area. That is offset for many companies and many technologies by an acceleration of pre-existing trends that actually prove to be adaptive in this crisis, what we call digital transformation, and also a trend toward a broader distribution. There's a constant cycle in the industry between centralization and distribution. Centrifugal and centripetal forces are at play. And COVID, with its hotspots and problems, is driving greater distribution. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the drive to the cloud is slowing. Quite the opposite. The cloud is a distributed central location, basically, and it's being used more broadly. What I'm seeing in the devices space is a great deal more attention to customer and user experience, and and from a business sense, attached services, and to a secondary extent, products, rather than dealing with the commodity endpoint CPUs, which are now more broadly distributed and will continue to be. The major vendors are now looking for ways of adding layers of value for which they can be compensated. The only company that so far reported, the only major company that so far reported, Apple, of course, is a pioneer in that space. And where Apple devices were hit hard by the crisis, Apple services, some of which are purely consumer content related, offset that decline. They were able to eke out a revenue increase. The more traditional commercial vendors are working very hard to provide better support services, greater automation, the ability to maintain resilience when you don't know where people will be working and where things are going to be opened up or shut down. So those three trends are the recession, which is going to hurt the industry badly, the acceleration of pre-existing trends to digital transformation, and this rearrangement of where things are done that is driving things out to more distributed and more resilient architecture. That's how I see it.
And yeah, this is Boss. Maybe just to extend on what Ezra was kind of looking at, the little broader trends, and I just wanted to kind of loop right back into where we started the conversation today. Nikki spoke up to how IBM, the message IBM Think should have probably been IBM Rethink because of everything going on and the way the companies have to operate and adjust to operate in today's environment. And one particular piece that we actually just published earlier this week was in a way of how a few companies have started to rethink the way companies need to stay connected with their either existing employees or potential new employees. So speaking about an initiative that stand out from Accenture Chief HR Officer Forum, so it was an initiative that between Accenture, Lincoln Financial Group, Verizon, and ServiceNow to start to think about that continuation of employment. How can all these employers from different backgrounds, they can facilitate a continued employment. So Accenture was kind of like, from a technology standpoint, we're able to set up a platform, analytics enhanced platform, with the goal of helping essentially enterprises sustain that business continuity by allowing the human resources to move and meet the demand, depending on where the demand is going on. We know that unemployment claims in the U.S. had topped over 30 million as of April 30th. We just heard the unemployment rate today as over 14%, 14.7% for the month of April. So staggering numbers, certainly something that has to be done. So those 4 companies and a bunch of others part of those HR transformation forum have rethought how to do it. But when it came to the application, when it came to the technology, there were certain design principles that Accenture had to go through and really think about really quickly, essentially. And the main piece was really focus was progress over perfection, considering the very fluid situation and how things are moving forward. From pilot to launch, the platform was set up for 14 days. And really the focus was to achieve a goal of minimally lovable product rather than being an all-encompassing solution. So speaking about the solution is an example of essentially how companies are trying to think outside the box, how to do that, do good ethos, and trying to support the broader, bigger position in the market beyond just gaining immediate value of the services and technologies that they may be offering. So certainly a good example of doing good in the society, and how trying to address some of the challenges those companies are going to, especially when it comes to unemployment and trying to sustain some unemployment between employers. So some features of that platform that we that Accenture developed, they have like a knowledge exchange center, essentially, which provides the best practices on benefits and kind of like focus on the evolving HR policies. It's a good example of how, obviously there'll be a new norm to operate, will be a new set of HR policies that many employers are going to have to adopt post-COVID-19. So this knowledge exchange center as part of that platform allows a lot of employers to share those best practices and to get that data feed into it in that platform. From a Accenture standpoint, just to kind of table position Accenture for a moment here, they are staying outside of any recruiting efforts. They're kind of the arm's length. They're more about the mediator and part of the technology provider, in the sense of like, okay, we're here. We know that there's some HR discussion. So here's the tool. Here's how the technology works, and here's some of the features that that can be leveraged as employers are struggling through either furloughs, or actually there's some pockets of demand for higher employment needs. So we understand that Accenture certainly would have opportunities to capture some long-term value out of that platform. But the immediate is more about, trying to do good, in the society and how things are. There's certain services that they provide as well, like data concierge services to some of the employers, more about pointing to the right data to be utilized as a result of that data exchange that many of those employers are conducting. But certainly a good example of rethinking of how to sustain business continuity. One big question for us that we posted to the Accenture executives that when we spoke to, that were behind the idea of and architecting that platform, is about the elasticity and applicability of that platform post COVID-19. So that's certainly a question that still to be seen. We, as I spoke earlier about the do good ethos of all companies trying to do well now during COVID-19, it makes perfect sense. But we'll see how things flow as you know, COVID abates and a lot of employers go back to chasing, reaching Wall Street guidance and margin performances that they have promised. So, you know, we've heard examples of how employers are utilizing the platform. Great opportunity, like for, let's say, Marriott, you know, furlough employees to be recruited by Walmart in certain geographies and whatnot. Just an example of that. But again, this is a good, you know, fluid situation and a good opportunity for vendors to do the right thing during the pandemic. But certainly the question about the applicability and the elasticity of all these stays to be answered and seen. I think the bigger challenge, the bigger opportunity here as well will be along the way it will be around changing and adapting the HR policies and practices, and how much employers also adapt to those and adopt those, because certainly there will be new HR policies coming out of the pandemic. But again, few unanswered questions that we'll keep track on, but certainly a good example of how vendors and buyers are rethinking the way they collaborate and you know, doing good for the society.